Thank you, Sushma.
Thank you. Pranam, everyone, and a very warm welcome. We continue our celebrations in the remembrance of Sri Aurobindo in this auspicious 150th anniversary year. We've been blessed by our masters in successful collaboration with many centers across the globe for the celebration. Today, we are very fortunate to have with us trustees of Los Angeles Center, USA, Dr. Lakshman Sehgal, Hansa Sehgal, and Vikas Bamba. They will be leading the session on the body in the light of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo. A brief introduction to our speakers today. Lakshman came to the ashram with his family in 1944 when he was 2 years old. He was nurtured by the mother since then. He had the unique privilege to see Sri Aurobindo's radiant body in 1950 as an 8-year-old. The mother paid special attention to his abilities with the body. He performed gymnastics many times a year in her presence, as well as participated in track and field competition. Lakshman used to be the mother's ball boy when she played tennis. Lakshman taught in the ashram school and served as a captain in the physical education department. He was married to Hansa by the mother in 1966, and since then, they have been partners in her yoga. Nurturing his talent and passion for physical education, the mother led him into the sadhana of the body, inspiring him to always be the best he can and revealing how the body can light the psychic flame. Currently, as a trustee of the center, Lakshman is actively engaged in all activities of the center with particular emphasis on sharing his experience and disseminating the most unique but often neglected part of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo's yoga through their newsletters, and for the past couple of years, offering from the center to the Bulletin of Physical Education, which the mother established in 1949. Hansa Sehgal. Hansa grew up and studied in Sri Aurobindo Ashram under the presence and loving guidance of the mother. And now, as a trustee of the Sri Aurobindo Center of Los Angeles, organizes the center's activities, managing the hosting of visitors, and general maintenance of the center. Hansa is the editor of The Quest, the center's monthly newsletter. The mother blessed her marriage to Lakshman 56 years ago. Hansa takes keen interest in sports and other physical activities and has been following a holistic approach for the body along the lines shown by the mother, and has conducted spiritual retreats, a couple of them entirely focused on the body in the light of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Vikas Bamba. Vikas has been active with the Sri Aurobindo Center of Los Angeles for more than 15 years. A pilgrim of the divine, Vikas is also a keen follower of the developments taking place in the world as it relates to the body, all of which find their beginnings in the physical education initiated by the mother in the ashram. Vikas plays tennis regularly. As a trustee, he assists in all the activities of the center and primarily in the thrice weekly collective meetings for which he selects the contents as well as moderates. I shall conclude the introduction with a short poem. Aspiration. A child of the mother, I aspire to be. A child of the mother, I aspire to be. A slave of her love, yet in my soul free. Each heartbeat of mine, an echo of her name. Just the thought of her is my heart's flame. Her part in me has learned to pray. Lead me towards that glorious day, when dissolved shall be my debt to the past. When dissolved shall be my debt to the past, and I'll lose all loss in her love's past. Poem by Vikas Bamba, published in the Mother India in December 1988. Thank you all very much, Lakshman Bhai, Hansa Ben, and Vikas, for being with us today and for this special session on the body. Please take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Sushma. And before I give it to Lakshman, you've sort of held me speechless by this selection. So that was a pleasant surprise. Thank you. Okay, Lakshman, go ahead.
Evening. Before I hand it back to Vikas, I thought I will start the session with a prayer of the Mother from June 15th, 1913. Even he who might have attained a perfect contemplation in silence and solitude would have arrived at it only by withdrawing from his body, by disregarding it. And so the substance of which the body is constituted would remain as impure, as imperfect as before, since he would have left it to itself, and by misguided mysticism, to the lure of superphysical splendors, the egoistic desire to unite with thee for his own personal satisfaction, he would have turned his back upon the very reason of his earthly existence. He would have refused like a coward to accomplish his mission, the redemption and purification of matter. To know that a part of our being is perfectly pure, to commune with this purity, to be identified with it, can be useful only if this knowledge is later used to hasten the transfiguration of the earth to accomplish thy sublime work. She uses this word transfiguration in several of her prayers later in 1914. The term transfiguration has been used from the Vedic rishis to Christ, which was to identify a luminous body. People had envisioned that, but never an attempt was made to establish that luminous body on earth, and that now can be done with the descent of the supermental consciousness. With that, I will pass on to Vikas so he can expand on the sadhana of the body.
Thank you, and I hope I'm audible to everybody. Thank you, Sushma. Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you, all the attendees. So today we share very special moments, precious moments. And they are precious for two reasons. One, we are thinking and remembering the divine incarnate, the Mother. And that itself becomes a sadhana. We draw closer to her as we do that. And there is also this fact that by coming together today, we are sharing a secret bond. We are sharing something that is most precious to us in our life. And that plays the largest part in our life, and that is the Divine Mother. Secondly, and of course that applies to the attendees, and to inject a tinge of humor into this, all of you on the other side listening, you get to experience what it is to be God. Why? Because you get to see us, you get to see every moment what we're doing, and we don't get to see you. So it must be a pleasant experience. With that, let me move on to the theme that we're going to explore. And again, thank you for giving us the opportunity to explore together the significance of the extraordinary emphasis the mother gave to the body in terms of physical education. It is no secret that in the spiritual traditions of the past, to juxtapose the body with spirituality was an anomaly, and understandably so, because the body had always been considered as an encumbrance in spiritual pursuit. Today, we find ourselves living in times where human endeavor and achievement is rapidly scaling new heights. There is another notable development. In every sphere of human activity, the participation of a healthy body has become indispensable, even a critical determinant. The overwhelming focus on health is unmistakable. Medical science is today questioning the inevitability of death. We are witnessing man engaged in a concentrated development of the body. The breathtaking and trailblazing accomplishments with the body by gymnasts and sportsmen alike leave us in no doubt as to the overwhelming focus on the body. Did the mother envision this and even initiate this? Are the wonders that we witness today accelerating the evolution of the body that will ultimately be plastic enough to embody a higher species than man? In her participation and emphasis on PE, was she then secretly infusing matter with a new consciousness, the results of which we see unfolding rapidly before us now? There is something else too, extremely important. In 1956, perhaps the most significant event in the history of the Earth occurred. A new substance became part of the Earth's atmosphere. A revolutionary turn was given to the pursuit of the divine. Sri Aurobindo, in one of his letters, refers to this. And here he was talking about the sunlit path, and the disciple turned around and said, "Well, what about those who cannot follow the sunlit path?" And it is in that context that Sri Aurobindo wrote this letter. And this is before 1956. Quote, "Those who put an entire and sincere confidence in her," which is the mother, "are able to follow the sunlit path. And even those who cannot, yet when they do put the trust, find their path suddenly easy. And if it becomes difficult again, it is only when distrust, revolt, abhiman, or other darknesses come upon them. The sunlit path is not altogether a fable. But you will ask, what of those who cannot? Well, it is for them I am putting forth all my efforts to bring down the supramental force within a measurable time. I know that it will descend, but I'm seeking its near descent, and with whatever dark obstruction of the earth nature or furious inroads of the Asuric forces seeking to prevent it, it is approaching the terrestrial soil. The supramental is not, as you imagine, something cold, hard, and rock-like. It bears within it the presence of the divine love as well as the divine truth. And its reign here means for those who accept it, the straight and thornless path in which there is no wall or obstacle, of which the ancient rishis saw the far-off promise. Close quote. So this substance, which came down in 1956, is extremely sensitive and responsive to our aspiration. And by bringing about the change in us, It's leading the world and us rapidly towards the divine. In short, it is leading our yoga. The mother talks about this, and she says about this action of this new substance. The new substance, and I'm quoting, the new substance that is spreading and acting in the world contains a warmth, a power, a joy so intense that all intellectual activity seems cold and dry beside it. And that is why the less one talks about these things, the better it is. A single instant, a single impulse of deep and true love, a single minute of deep communion with the divine grace brings you much closer to the goal than all possible explorations. And then she goes on to say, I may say that by the very fact that you live upon earth at this moment, you absorb with the air that you breathe this new supramental substance, which is spreading in earth's atmosphere. And it is preparing in you things you will manifest all of a sudden as soon as you have taken the decisive step. People sleep, they forget, they take life easy. They forget all the time. But if we could remember that we are here at an exceptional hour, a unique time, that we have this immense good fortune, this invaluable privilege of being present at the birth of a new world, we could easily get rid of everything that impedes and hinders our progress. So the most important thing, it seems, is to remember this fact. Even when one doesn't have the tangible experience, to have the certainty of it and faith in it, to remember always, to recall it constantly, to go to sleep with this idea, to wake up with this perception, to do all that one does with this great truth as the background, as a constant support. This great truth that we are witnessing the birth of a new world. We can participate in it. We can become this new world. And truly, when one has such a marvelous opportunity, one should be ready to give up everything for its sake. Close quote. So the question is, how do we receive? How do we become responsive to this new substance, receptive? And yes, prepare the body. A robust physical body is indispensable. How? What is the practice? Well, the practice of past yogic disciplines, like the 8 limbs of, for example, Patanjali's yoga, yam, niyam, asana, pranayam, pratyahar, dharana, dhyan, samadhi, are not really applicable in today's time. They are laborious, time-consuming, and quite ill-suited in current times. We might ask then, is physical culture and exercise perhaps as much a yogic practice as pranayam and asanas? Perhaps even more relevant? Seems like heresy, huh? I mean, that's what the mother did. The absolute extraordinary emphasis. But I will say not a whole lot more. You will hear from Lakshman, who spent a considerable amount of time here. And we'll also talk about the considerable amount of time that the mother spent on PE, not just as entertainment or sports or to regale herself or as a break. In fact, as we will hear, she stated that we would not be able to take a single step if we despise physical activities. It may sound too simplistic to say that, yes, just exercise and that is the way you can be receptive. And you can open your soul to the divine. But well, we have the example of the mother. There was a time where she actually even stopped the meditation because people thought that was spirituality, and we'll hear more of that. And finally, we might ask, well, physical activities, going to the gym, exercising, well, where's the soul growth there? And I'm going to share the mother's words, revealing the nexus between physical culture and the soul. And she writes, when one sees, quote, when one sees the absolutely marvelous results of this culture, when one observes the extent to which the body is capable of perfecting itself, one understands how useful this can be to the action of the psychic being which has entered into this material substance. For naturally, when it is in possession of an organized and harmonized instrument, which is full of strength and suppleness and possibilities, its task is greatly facilitated. Much said here. I will now hand over the baton to more qualified people who can talk about this, who are living examples of what I just talked about and read and shared. So I'll hand it over to Hansa and Lakshman Sehgal. And Hansa.
Thank you, Vikas. It was beautiful. So as you heard that I grew up under the care and love of mother. She took care of 200 children and answered to every one of us. Whenever we connected with her, she wrote back. She had time for us. So I will, one thing growing up under her, we all understood that physical education, that means 7 days a week for all the children. We saw swimming, tennis, no, not tennis, swimming, gymnastics, track and field. There are 7 different items, different things we were doing, and we had to attend each and every one. Now, if we didn't want to attend for some reason, we had to get an okay from the doctor of the ashram. So that's how strict she was. She wouldn't let us just call or just stop by and tell the captain that I can't today. But she was making sure that we are taking that very seriously. So we had to do that, and we did. And it wasn't so in school. School, we were in free progress. So it was the title itself, free progress, means, you are individually progressing according to your love for whatever subject you have and your love for studying whatever you enjoy studying. There are no hard and fast rules when we were growing up, under her. But I will share one encounter. I had a personal one with her, which is about the subject that we are covering today, the body. So when I was 14, I was having a lot of pain during 3 days of the month, and I didn't want to go for physical education those 3 days. Now, what do? Every month, do I go to the doctor and get the slip from the doctor and hand it over to the captains? Instead, I chose to write to her. I wrote to her, Mother, I just can't, I don't feel like going. I'm in pain all the time, those 2-3 days. She wrote back to me, beautiful note. She says, my dear child, she wrote in French because we corresponded with her in French, So she said, my dear child, let me tell you one thing. When you exercise your body, the blood circulation goes faster. That makes you feel very good. No matter what other pains are there, you must go. You must go all 3 days and do all the activities except for swimming, So fast forward, all those years when I was growing up, I never missed a day from those days. And I tell you, my God, she was so right. That I never felt like sitting at home and laying in the bed and sort of, harping on that, So that was just wonderful. This is how we connected with her with any of her personal issues, and she always responded, even after coming here, So, but I won't go through all those incidences because it doesn't relate to our topic today. If I may share one of her quotes, uh, it's very relevant, Few persons understand that generally they who are against this external discipline, this concentration on a material achievement like sports, are exactly the people who lack totally control over their physical being. But to realize the integral yoga of Sri Aurobindo, control of the body is one of the first indispensable steps. They who despise physical activities are people who will not be able to take a single step on the true way of integral yoga unless they get rid of their despise first. The control of the body in all its forms is an indispensable basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Hansa. This was lovely. Yeah. Physical activities, yes, to despise. There's somewhere, some other place she says it also that you can say what you want, but you're not doing the integral yoga if you are not engaged in physical activities. Quite a powerful statement. Yeah, Lakshman, please.
The term sadhana of the body was one that mother coined. And she says that when she was talking about seeing the Russian gymnasts perform in 1958, she commented at the marvelous achievements they had accomplished. And she said, they are materialist in nature, but by the use of an enlightened human will, they were able to accomplish so much. She says only if they can open slightly to the psychic, they could do miracles. What the Russian gymnasts were performing at that time in 58, and what I learned from an Olympic gymnast from Germany a couple of years later, and vaulting was what was at that time currently the Olympic vault. It was called the Yamashita. When I look back at that almost all of those, the performance of the Russian gymnasts, what I was being taught, seems very elementary compared to what the gymnasts are doing today. In all sports, you see the level of achievement. And majority may have only enlightened will, strong enlightened will, that allows them to put in hours a day in and day out. Like some of the tennis players have done it over a period of 2 decades. That kind of discipline and commitment. And you see a much larger population exercising in some form or another, whether it's the gym or walking or that. This has become like part of the world culture in growing numbers. In 1943, as mother was starting to accept families with children, she opened the boarding, and one of the early families came in 43 was Tara Johar's. We have a Tara Johar's family. So they were the first residents of boarding along with a few other children. And that boarding house, which is right next to the guest house that Sri Aurobindo lived in for a period of time, was a big yard. It was like a farming land that the mother converted into the playground. That was the first physical activity space that she had acquired. So from 1944 onwards, all our physical activities that supervise, from watching 4-year, 5-year-olds like me doing rabbit race and all the things. She would be standing at the finish line watching us do things. She did that, watch the adults do march past and exercise as they watch under Pranab's supervision. She set up in 1949 when she established the Physical Education Trust, of which she made Pranab the only trustee, independent trust from the Ashram Trust. She asked Sri Aurobindo for the first issue of the Bulletin of Physical Education. This was beginning of 1949. And Sri Aurobindo was busy at that time finishing Savitri, revisions of Savitri. So she had to almost pester it a few times. And then Sri Aurobindo remarked to Baran, I better write something for the mother. She needs this. So she literally stopped him from working on Savitri so she could write an essay on the perfection of body for the first issue of the bulletin. That tells you how important that was, that she was willing to interrupt his finishing of Savitri with a document for centuries for the future, so he could write an essay on the body. She spent over 4 hours a day on physical education, watching from the young children to the adults, all kinds of activities, from track and field. And it was always, I think, something that Hansa alluded to, but the joy to know that whether you're a girl or a boy, you had access to every physical activity, every activity. It was not this only for girls or this only for boys. It was for her, I think, very liberating, coming in as a young teenager. So she had basically no gender bar. She had to fight tradition, because in those days, especially in Pondicherry, girls were all wearing long skirts and stuff. So she used the excuse that the climate is too hot, you cannot exercise in this. And so she changed the uniform to shorts and shirts for girls and boys. But she kept pursuing that by example. She played tennis, resumed playing tennis at age 70 and played for a whole decade. She used to play from 4 to 5. It was the hottest part of the year, of the day. When you never saw her walking as a casual walk. It was always like she had a purpose, she had rushing to get somewhere. Except when she was being shown something, whether it's an exhibition hall or opening of the electric department or what have you, the school. Other than that, when she's walking, she steps out of the car and she's marching. She's not a casual walker by any stretch of the imagination. She acquired the tennis ground in 1947, and the tennis courts were completed in 1948 in record time, and she started playing tennis in 1948. The tennis ground then became the venue for track and field competition. And the races we used to do on the Oceanside Boulevard. There again, she sat and watched, and she paid so much personal attention. In the late 40s, when my peers were doing gymnastics, and one of them hit his back as he was doing vaulting over the box, and he was bedridden for a month. Mother, on her way back to the ashram, used to stop by his house to see how he's doing. That much importance she gave. In 62, when she had received a room, she still kept contact with all the physical activities that are happening, especially these 2nd of December's demonstrations. And Udar used to keep her posted on how the thing was going. So it happened as I was practicing trampoline, and I lost my balance and hit my chin and had a cut under the chin. This scar is still there. So Udar mentioned to her that this had happened, Her first question was, will you be able to perform on 2nd of December? So Udar said, yes, that won't be a problem. That's how much she was concerned about it. I remember the track and field competition. I had taken off about 6 inches or so behind the jump off line. So my distance was measured from this, what should have been the correct starting point. But that was not enough for her, even though I had broken the ashram record. She wanted it remeasured from my point of takeoff. That's what how much attention to details that she paid. She sat very close to the sandbox so she could see, and she was watching every step, more so than my parents would be watching from the gallery. Her attention to every single thing that related to the body, to physical education, was unprecedented. It is because of that when I left the ashram to come to the States and got her blessings to do so, the way she orchestrated everything else is a story for another day. But it's just unbelievable. But when I left, I did it with the promise to myself that I will try to stay as fit as the last time I performed gymnastics in front of her. And I kept that in mind for several decades that I was here. And only in 2018, when Hansa decided to have a retreat on the body, that Vikas and I started searching their literature, find out what they had written about it. I was doing it as a personal attachment to her. And the time commitment she had put behind me. But this retreat that Hansa organized opened a whole new world. And since then, we have focused requests to newsletters to bring out all they have written on the body, because most of that has remained unspoken and not even compiled as a separate entity. So that has sort of become our goal. As you have seen the newsletters, what we have been trying to show is that new substance, work that she has done, how that is changing the physical world, as Vikas pointed out. You see it in all fields of sports. You see greater sportsmanship that was unheard of in the 80s. I'll give an example. In the 80s, you were in a group sports, you were not supposed to associate with your opposite team. They were enemies. That was the psychology. You're fighting your enemies. The same with tennis. You had a cursory handshake, but you never let people know that in the locker room you were friends, because that was the image of this. But now you see they're embracing, they show their friendship in public. This is the kind of sportsmanship that Sri Aurobindo talks about in the perfect body and the purpose of the sports. So you are seeing these changes. It may be mostly enlightened human will, but regardless, that push from behind, as Mother said, both of them are very much present in the subtle physical and very active. So any slight opening, they're able to do amazing things with what the body is able to perform today compared to what it was doing 20 or 30 years ago. What she had created as a co-educational was revolutionary not only in India, in the world. It was only in the 90s that Article 19 that the US Congress passed that provided equal funding for women's physical education in colleges as men 30 years later. So the changes that are happening, and now you have Sri Ramdev, Sri Ravi Shankar telling their followers, pranayama is fine, go to the gym, work out. So you see, compared to what it used to be 50, 60 years ago, quite a revolutionary change in the mentality towards the body and exercise. And Mother says, she wrote in one of her letters in 1932 to her son Andre, Monsieur Andre used to call him, not about her sadhana, I think. She writes that she's busy, not what she's busy with, that, but she says, finally, I have an inner courtyard that I can walk every day. I don't have to walk on the street anymore. So from day when she was walking on the streets of Pondicherry till the ashram courtyard where the samadhi is now, became available to her. So as he says, you can't call any exercise yogic exercise or not yogic exercise. It is the attitude and the consciousness with which you do it. And she says you can see the difference in the body of somebody who is doing it with a conscious aspiration and opening to somebody who is doing it mechanically. So I would say that in closing, one does not need to belong to the gym. One can use multiple any ways to find some time to exercise, be it walking to work, taking the tube, taking the stairs up from the tube instead of taking the escalator, or walking with the escalator, but walking, stepping up and walking up rather than standing in one place. There are multiple ways you can do it. When I used to travel in Europe, those days there were no fitness centers or gyms. Most of the hotels didn't have. So I would run up the steps of the hotel and take the elevator down, run up the steps, take the elevator down. One time I was in Rome and I went running. I figured out how hard can it be, go this way and come back the exact same way, and got lost, But eventually found my place back. But what happens over time, once you discipline yourself, the tamas in the body, in psychology, is a big hurdle. We were fortunate, Hansa, that we worked with her, so she helped us remove that tamas so that we do it as regularly, as spontaneously as brushing our teeth in the morning. Become a routine part of life like any other chore that is essential for the body, whether it's food, brushing, what have you. That effort, initially, that discipline is put in whatever form you take for exercise, committing certain amount of time. That gradually helps develop the consciousness in the body. And that's what she's seeking for, is enough of us that do whatever we can, whatever she says this, scientifically organized. She's not saying everybody should be jumping up and down, everybody should be running. marathon, so within each one's capacity in a conscious way, developing something that will enhance their yoga, their sadhana of the body, and how best we can each participate in that yoga. With that, I want to thank Sushma and all of you for giving us this opportunity to share our thoughts on our sadhana of the body.
So I'll share something interesting. So the past is, because of this, I won't say aversion, but the stigma of, exercising, etc., as being unspiritual or being worldly, or, that stigma, Mother, I feel, went a long way to break those traditions. And I myself, of course, have been subject to them as much as anybody else. But this fact of her spending so much time in the playground is unparalleled of any avatar, and almost seems to be outlandish to say that, well, any exercises can contribute to to equate this with asanas, because the only permissible sort of exercises do pranayam or go into those Buddhist retreats for 21 days, put off your cell phone, etc. But yeah, she was quite clear on these things, and we have so many quotes from her in this regard, and it's quite incredible. And so in one place she says, and I quote, with reference to asanas and pranayam, she says, "From our experience, we have found that a particular system of exercises cannot be stamped as the only yogic type of exercises. And we cannot definitely say that participation in those exercises only will help." And then she goes on to say, "Any rational system of exercises suited to one's need and capacity will help the participant to improve in health. Moreover, it is the attitude that is more important." And here is the clincher. "Any well-planned and scientifically arranged program of exercises practiced with a yogic attitude will become yogic exercises, and the person practicing them will draw full benefit from the point of view of physical health and moral and spiritual uplift." We just, which warrants a very close look. And I'll share a personal experience here of somebody at the center given to exercises in a very, casual way, of course, for entertainment and, and the kick of the endorphins, etc. Of course, a staunch devotee also. So the habit was exercise and then, go into some sort of meditation. And a curious phenomena started taking place, every time he went into meditation, after the exercise, he felt a strong pull at the heart center or solar plexus, And of course, he attributed it to the meditation, as we all would probably, right? Because we have this sort of thing that meditation produces the effect. But he didn't have that experience at other times when he meditated. This phenomena repeated itself, and this pull or tug going within, which happened very spontaneously. Meditation, to master meditation, can take a lifetime, if not more. But this tug he felt every time, each time after the meditation. It was incredible. Finally, he confessed that, shared that he came to a place, beautiful place of joy, place of happiness, and a poise that was independent of everything else. And that was the first time, really, because nothing succeeds like success, as they say. A living example is worth more than 1,000 words. That was the first clear indication. I mean, everything sort of came together, that, well, there was a reason mother did this. This new substance, it definitely needs a healthy body. It not only a healthy body, the more the body is responsive, then it actually facilitates rapidly the soul growth. That sort of put into some perspective all that she did, a clue, a link, the amount of time she spent is just incredible. Yeah.
To reiterate what Vikas just said, here is a quote from the mother. Yes, people in their mind and their vital has to become divine. Well, it is all the old story of spirituality, reiterated for centuries. No, now it is the body. It is the body that wants to participate. It is altogether a progress. She says elsewhere that finally the body is free from the shackles of the vital and the mental being. And it's independent, and it is finding the joy in its own progress.
And then when I continued to do some research after learning of this experience, Lakshman, of course, shared, and I felt, well, as sort of a discovery of these things. And after talking to Lakshman, I felt I was preaching to the choir here, And then he shared some really amazing things. She started at 70, always very particular, and she was always there at 4 o'clock, right, Lakshman? And he said that if there'd be nobody on the other side, she was always there in this, just extreme heat and humidity there. But at 4 o'clock, she was right there at the tennis court. It's pretty incredible. Pretty incredible. Yeah. Elsewhere in the agenda, I also came across, and this is Satprem, who'd been with her for a long time. He sort of, in a way, talked to the mother that, this gym culture is coming up in somewhat a discouraging way, that perhaps, men were becoming more materialistic, right? So he too was subject in some way, and mother enthusiastically responded, "Oh, wonderful. That means the action of this new force is working." And we see that today. Well, we know where the roots are. And as Lakshman shared with me that much before even the world thought about the gym, right, Lakshman, when did she establish this? Can you share that a little bit?
When I first came in mid-60s, 64, there was no gyms anywhere. These organized gyms only started in the early 80s. So as a student, I always could not afford, and there was no place to go to exercise. And I was staying as a paying guest in a Cuban family, so I had a little room in the attic. But coming back from the university, I used to do the standard exercise that you can do in the Indian style, the Danbata and abdominal exercises, and I use my chemistry textbooks as barbell to do upper body exercise. That was my routine. And tennis was available, so I was able to play tennis throughout. And then when Hansa joined, we used to play tennis together on a regular basis. It was only in the early 80s that he had organized health clubs, like Bali's and others that came up. Now they're at pretty much every street corner. I kid with people that every street corner you can find a 24-hour fitness and a dentist's office. besides fast food. So it's the changes that have taken place, the result of worker, this the gym culture that she applauds is that the focus on the body. People are doing all kinds of different ways of exercise. We see more people walking, more people riding the bike, more people doing a variety of different things, and also the more tools have become available, so that, like, for example, the resistance bands that you can buy in a little bag, you don't have to go anywhere to do, you can do, I use those to warm up before I go for tennis or pickleball. So you can travel with it, you can go anywhere and do that regardless of the weather, you can get a full body exercise with that. And now on YouTube, you can find all kinds of exercise routines for all ages, they're for adults or people. You can do it sitting in a chair, you can do it standing, you can do it. So the easy access to different forms of exercises to meet everybody's needs, as Mother says, scientifically organized. This is what the YouTube is providing, is exercise routines for all ages and for all conditions. If people are unable to stand and exercise, they can do sitting on the chair. So this is, you look at it from her perspective, what she has done, it seems pretty amazing to me, the changes that have come. This has not happened randomly. And as pointed out, because now people are actually paying money to go to the gym. They're getting nothing in return other than the joy of feeling the well-being of the health and stuff. So it gives me personally great joy to see how much of her effort is bearing fruit around the world, including India.
Now, when did she start the gym in the ashram, though? When was that?
1945, when the playground became available, and then soon after, in the playground, Pranab was able to get some equipment from Germany. So he had made good contacts with Germany. So we had a track and field coach that came and spent 3 months with us, and was still in touch with the ashram, 60 years later. Mother gave him the name Saumitra, and he's still connected with the ashram. The Russian gymnast, the German gymnast also came from Germany. So the equipment that I grew up using is still in use today, in addition to other equipment. The playground was the first gym in a sense. Everything was done there. Then the tennis ground was added in 48, and some of the activities moved to the tennis ground. And then 51 or 52, the sports ground was added, and more activities were added. And Mother used to come there to watch track and field competition, swimming competition, all of that. So she spent from 4 o'clock. She left the ashram around 4, and she came back to the ashram around 9:30. I live right next door from the ashram, and those days the power was very random in Pondicherry. Power could go off anytime. So we had set up a power generator to provide power to the ashram building, and that was right below where we were living. So when that was established, Mother came for the opening and looked at the thing, all that. But the generator went off around midnight, 11:30 midnight, and it came on again around 4:30 in the morning. So that was the sort of 4 hours where they decided she didn't need the light or the power, but she was working for 24/7, in one realm or another.
All right, Sanjeev.
That's wonderful, Vikas, Lakshman, and Hansa. Wonderful to have your personal experiences with the mother, your personal stories, personal recounts as well, such vivid accounts as well, that really does help us. Especially we backed it up with so many quotes. We may have read them in passing, but by bringing them to this particular webinar, they have become very significant, especially to do with the body. I'm sure some people will have some questions, but I have lots of questions to ask, if I may start off, and for any three of you. One of the first things that was mentioned, and both Vikas and Hansa mentioned it, the word despise for physical education, despise for physical culture. What is the reason for despise? Perhaps if we can tackle that part of it, then maybe an opening to physical education may become easier. And any comments on that?
I think we can't mention and Mother talked about the centuries of tradition, where the body was used as a shackle that the sooner we got rid of it, the better. So that is one aspect of it that's sort of ingrained in our genes, so to say. That's not important. That's not why we want to waste our time. Tell our children, you come from school and you get a tutor. And it's all about education, and the body was not from childhood. That has been the mindset, and that mindset plays into tamas. There's mental tamas, there's vital tamas, and this is what Mother says, when the body is under the control of the mind and the vital, it could impose that tamas, encourage that tamas in the body. Okay. And how do you do that? Using centuries of tradition. You're wasting your time. Body is not important. Focus on your studies. So consciously, whether you may not despise, but that tamas has left in your subconscious a conscious neglecting of the body. So if you're aware that when you're working, you have these thoughts, and I was also, when I was working, you say, it's been a long day, maybe I'll work out tomorrow or something. But because of my personal commitment to Mother, I said I would ignore that. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. Then you move out, and work. But over time, that thought even doesn't come into my mind. I get up, it's like brush my teeth, do this. It become part of my absolute daily routine, as has been Hansa's, and it's become Vikas's. We each have our own time. So, it's the time I'm going to go do this. So it's initial discipline to not allow these tamasic thoughts, in the sense of, I'm too tired today, I've done this, I'm too tired, I don't have time now. Just like you set aside time to eat, you set time to bathe, you set aside time to work out. And if it is walking, it becomes very easy. You walk to work, whenever you get a chance, you walk. But that walk done as a body's prayer to the divine. Do it, not as a window shopping walk, as I call, but a more conscious effort, So there's simple things to that. But it's fighting that innate centuries created tamasic mindset with regards to the body. And it's where we become aware that this is something that is foreign, that has been inflicted on my body. I got to get rid of it.
I have caught my so many times in all these years. So I've left Pondicherry 56 years back, and of course we go to ashram almost every year. But at home, while working now, I'm retired. But when I was working, I didn't have much time raising two children, and didn't have time. But and lethargy, after coming from work, I'll say, oh, I'm tired, over weekend I'll make up my exercise. But once I convinced myself, worked very hard to get rid of that lethargy from mind, that even after I came from work, after I had whatever I had to do with the children, I found 45 minutes to an hour that I have to exercise before I go to bed. And believe me, it's like magic. You have more energy, even though you are physically tired from work. It's something that I experienced in all these 56 years since I left ashram. So I think it's read mother's quotes, and that really helps. And
Thank you for that. One more question before I let others ask questions. You've talked a lot about the physical education part of it and physical culture, and extremely important to make the body supple and plastic to the new substance that descended in 1956 and is working on us. What about the nutrition aspect of it? Because that is equally important, isn't it? Because we are actually dealing with looking after the cells, not just the body, it's the cells in the body. So have you in your retreats considered the nutrition part of the body?
I think Vikas can address that, but I think the mother in the ashram again was trying to break the traditional barriers. Certainly for the children, like in the dining room, it was a vegetarian diet and relatively bland, because you have people from different parts of India, and some maybe will take spices, some so they always provided green chilies on the side and what have you, and somebody complained to Sri Aurobindo one time about the food in the dining room, and Sri Aurobindo said, there may come a time when the food is being served on golden plates, but the food will be the same. So, but in the corner house, which is the dining for the children, to break this idea that yoga means vegetarian food, she introduced feeding children chicken once a week. And the person in charge, initially, he resigned because he couldn't accept the idea. That's how strong the traditional thinking is that she was trying to break. And Sri Aurobindo in his letters talks about the food. He says, that as long as the body is not totally conscious, you have to take what food you feel necessary to provide the energy necessary. It doesn't say this food or that food, but in a rational, balanced fashion, and that address that whether the children or adults, and sleep. This tendency to try to say I can live without sleep here, or I can live without food. So that is possible, but they are looking for the redemption of all of humanity, not few who can do this specific type of yoga and live with the energy centers. That's not how the evolution of the new species is going to happen. It has to start with a greater focus on the body that includes nutrition, sleep, all of that in a rational fashion. And because Mother says the first steps in this direction to the establishment of new species is prolongation of life. Prolongation of life, not through medical science, but through a more enlightened, more robust body, through the combination of rational methods of eating and sleeping and daily routine.
I grew up eating food that mother had created for the dining room, and later on with the children's dining room. Always, all 3 meals, and there was somebody always looking after one child or other children. So they found out that me and my 2 brothers were not eating eggs, because I grew up in Gujarat not eating eggs. My grandmother would not, she wasn't comfortable. She didn't believe in non-fertile eggs. So anyway, but they found out, and I was approached that if mother found out, she won't be happy. You must eat eggs every day. And then they made a point that all three of us show up to eat eggs. So, and coming back to the diet, whatever she created, I can speak this very happily and lovingly for her, that she had every meal carved that was healthy for us. So, we never gain weight, or we never lose weight. And do all the 7 days, everything, basketball, volleyball, whatever we are required to do, the captains have created, we did, and we ate, and it was plenty, that when we go to bed, we are not hungry, but not overfed. So she had created all this. I grew up with that kind of sort of diet, and I don't think anyone in ashram ever thought that we had to think about eating properly, because she was hogging us like over everything and everybody. Like, she would meet people from dining room who were looking over everything. She would meet in every department, like vegetable, fruits. They found out that I wasn't not eating certain fruits. I was asked by the head of the food department, you must eat this. So she took care of all that. And if Lakshman and I brought that with us, we have tried to practice, and again, it's a mental discipline. Lakshman is very disciplined in his intake. I'm not so disciplined, I have to admit that. Yeah. So that's but she has taught us. She's written. Probably she didn't write much because she was totally focused on doing it right for all 200 children and the parents and the families. 2,000 people when we were growing up. So that's with the diet.
Thank
Yeah,
you
I
so
just want to add a quick point, and here, rather, Lord, the question raised by
Yeah.
Sanjeev, and Sanjeev, yeah, I'd say it's a great question, and it must come from a mind that straight goes to the heart of things. So that's a beautiful question, because you can't really get rid of the despise unless you know why you have the despise, right? I mean, that goes for everything in life. You go straight to the root of why this is so in ourselves personally. Also, when we grow, we go to the heart and root of things, of why we are what we are, and outgrow. So I thought that was a great question. That was a really beautiful question. Why is there a despise? And I think Lakshman gave us a very good answer. And also the prejudice of age-old centuries, it's not without foundation. I mean, the fact of the matter is, nobody, not just humanity, no life has ever been able to hoodwink death. Absolutely. It's just incredible. So with that experience of humanity in its psyche of man, that you're fighting a losing battle, right? When you're going to lose, and all you're going to do is get beaten badly with old age, disease, and death confronting you in the end, the despise naturally sets in. So it's not without foundation. And so it is with the world too. I mean, anybody living, I think, even great spiritual figures, Sri Aurobindo said in one of his letters, Nirvana is not easy. You live in this world 101 can give you, a sound beating. And so people, anytime you get beat badly, and by the thorns and thickets of life, they bleed you, and the despise naturally comes in. And so not just the despise of the body, because of its inevitability of death and loss, the world too. The world can hit you hard and you despise the world. And so you say, okay, you know what? Even Mira said, I have nothing to do with the world. And that's extolled as the highest thing. Spirituality became synonymous with renouncing the world, because the world had nothing to offer. And in fact, the more you despise the world, the more spiritual you are. So I think the experience of mankind with the world and with the body is the root. That's my, I've thought about it just like you did, and that's the root of the despise. But mother, I really felt she didn't believe in the inevitability of it. She challenged death. And Lakshman brought to my attention that she was not leaving her last testament of will for the disciples or a successor or anything. She was asking Pranam, make me walk, when she was getting the repeated arrhythmia and heart attacks. So she never accepted the inevitability of that. On the contrary, she believed the body can participate in the divine realization. I mean, nothing short of the immortal body. But I mean, do we accept that? I mean, if we were to take each of us, I mean, are we going to say that we can be immortal? I don't know. I'd say not, So I'd say in some way, that prejudice still remains in us, because though Sri Aurobindo said, of course, supramental is here. But that's a great question. I really like that.
Well,
Interestingly, Parikshit, when he has only 7 days to die, in the Bhagavatam, and Vyasa's son Sukdev, gives him the Bhagavatam, he tells him, interestingly, I cannot prevent death, but what I can make sure is that you won't die again. That I'll make sure. Which means you don't come back into the world. That the despise is there. It's not without foundation. Yeah, that's my. A great question though. Yeah.
I think our goal is not to be immortal in this body. Our goal, I feel, should be to make this body that we have been given, to make it as conscious and as subservient to her work as possible. Whether it's for the next 10 years, 20 years, or whatever the time frame is irrelevant, as long as whatever time we have been given be utilized to the maximum in supporting her work on body.
Yeah. Thank you. Sushma?
Just first of all, big heartfelt gratitude to Lakshman Bhai, Hansa and Vikas. That was an amazing talk, and a lot of things to really for us to ponder on and think about and reflect. I just have a question or question about the body. Mother has said that the body must not rule; it must obey. So by its very nature, the body is a docile and faithful servant. In my field of work, I'm a physiotherapist, so I see people at different levels, different spectrum. So there are some people who actually think body is a master and they want the maximum out from the body. And then at the other end, there are people who don't know what to do with the body. They may have the will, but they feel they are the victim of the pain or the condition or the problem that they have. So where can we start? So for people who are actually feel the body is the master, but they don't really look into the mental or the vital aspect of it, how can they just start with the body, so from the outer shell and then go inwards? And what about the other end of the spectrum where people have issues with the body? They may have the will, they may have the mental capacity, but the body is frail. Just his mother and Sri Aurobindo sort of guided us on that.
Well, you're talking about the body. Again, we came back to physical, this supramental substance. Our understanding is that this exercise and again, any exercise, as she says, and not necessarily pranayama and asanas and all that. I think for this modern age, as evidenced, Lakshman said, outside the gym, people are paying for it. This exercise makes the substance, this supramental substance, makes us more receptive. I believe, right? And so there is also, it's uncanny but true, that the body is now because of this supramental substance and the work mother did, it is responding now more to the forces, the higher and the higher nature, or paraprakriti, or call it, whatever, rather than the blind inconscient and the animal instincts. And it is more receptive than it was to the higher forces, to the higher nature. So practically, what does it mean for us? It may sound weird, but this thing that auto-suggesting, that you're going to be well, and then, supplemented with exercise, I feel the body is more responsive than it was before. So, the thing that you keep telling yourself, that you're going to be okay, that you are okay, actually has a greater effect because of what mother has done. So the thing of fake it till you make it is actually true. The body is now more, less subservient to the slave, and less of a slave to the lower forces.
I find there are two things that external forces that impose on the body. One is what I mentioned earlier, the tamas, that age-old thing. The second is fear. That's the biggest deterrent. Any negative thoughts about, if I do this, it's going to happen. If I do that, it's going to happen. And you may say you start with caution, but caution is just opening the door for fear. And anxiety will come in. I'll give you an example. In one of our classes, the teachers set up a debate on the pluses and minuses of gymnastics versus track and field, athletics, what we call. Okay. So I ended up being on the side where I had to promote the pluses of athletics. So, when you do a debate, you try to say what the downside of gymnastics is versus athletics, kind of thing. So one of the comments I made was that doing too much gymnastics stunts your growth, Okay. And, I had that, I don't know when that thought had gotten planted, there were these bars I would hang to make myself grow taller, what have you, but I had that plan. So I made that comment. One of my classmates, after the class, passed that comment on to Pranab, the head of physical education department. Then Pranab passed it on over lunch or what have you with the mother that afternoon, that comment that I made. So now come 4 o'clock, I'm standing by the umpire's chair, waiting for the mother to go by like she always did. And as she came by me, she grabbed my hand and dragged me to one side, away from everybody's ears, that nobody could hear. And she gave me a sound verbal thrashing. And a lot of things she said were, to me, as a teenager, non-factual. I was so upset. How could she say this? How could she say this? The following day, I was going to play a soccer game against local teams. So the ritual was that before she sat to go to the tennis ground, we would see her there, in the ashram. So I was still upset the following day. So I tried to stay at as far back as I could, be sort of out of her eyesight, still upset as a teenager. So she comes out, she looks, and connects with my eyes, and instantly she clears all of that from my head. Instantly clears all of that. Many years later, recognized that even in the subconscious, it didn't want anything negative related to the body. We have so many things that we are not aware of that play on us through fear, through this, through that, And she didn't even want a single thought that was even remotely negative about anything related to the body. So it's trying to become more conscious and be a good gatekeeper for the body to not allow these things to go. And then you put a sincere, I'm going through physical therapy after my right knee replacement. Just had that 3 weeks ago. But it's discarding all fear, having some tolerance for the pain, because you know what your end goal is, what you're trying to achieve, and making the best effort of that, not backing out out of fear, not backing out into other negative, unproductive mindset, and as a therapist, I'm sure you do that, Sushma. You keep encouraging your patient that she's getting great, that, it's just to keep gently pushing the person while still recognizing it, that she's going to be in some pain or some discomfort, But it's a collaborative effort between the therapist and the,
To answer simple way, Sushma's question for me, it's I have gone through, I even played tennis today. I'm 79 and I play tennis. So I have done all kinds of exercises since I left ashram in Zumba classes and aerobics and yoga classes I have done for many years. One thing I learned that after I was 60, I started having here and there some joint problems. So what do you do as per mother? How do you handle? So I always practice where you listen to your body. If you can take care of it as soon as possible with medical assistance, you do that. But you have to let it heal. And once you heal, go back. Don't have that lethargy again, That's what catches, I think, I feel. And I've gone through a few times with my knee or my ankle, and I have come around, always come around, but it's a little bit at a time. And she's there to help you, keep her with you. That's what I feel, because in all of satsangs, he cannot emphasize enough to remember her, remember them, as frequently as possible in our day, right? We all practice that. So when it comes to physical hurt or pain, or you do come back. I have come back most of the time. Sometimes I have taken off 3 months to make sure that, I am fit to do what I want to do or what I like to do, So that's my practical answer in terms of my experience,
Yeah. On another related note, I should say, because we are talking about the body and this prejudice, the good point, a very beautiful question that was raised. This prejudice is so strong. And so, as soon as we started more into this physical activity, people shared their experience. And one of them shared, again, an avid, eager participant in physical activities. And he shares the experience. He says, I dreamt of Sri Aurobindo. I mean, this is not mother, Sri Aurobindo. And I mean, it was staggering. It was staggering. I mean, and all he did was physical exercise. And, these living examples reinforce this thing that, it is not this powerful intellectual pursuit, as we just read, that as sometimes we often say, going from the mind, to the higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, over mind, and who knows, you might end up with never mind, and so. But this is just amazing, I'm dreaming of the mother, dreaming of Sri Aurobindo, and there has to be a link to this, to what the mother did, all these years. Definitely.
I took for my 80th birthday, which was in February, as a gift was two new knees. So I got my left knee replaced in April, and I got my right knee replaced 3 weeks ago. But between the two, I went back, was able to go back and play tennis and pickleball and my bike riding. And when I first met the surgeon, I told him I want to be back on the pickleball and tennis course in 6 weeks. He got nervous, so he called my son, who's a physician. He said, "Tell your dad to take it easy." But I ended up not 6 weeks, but ended up start playing again in 2 months. So it was interesting that because I look forward to these surgeries because I knew the end goal is I'm going to go back and do what I've loved doing for the past, so many decades, and not just walking, be able to walk, which I do, but be able to continue playing tennis, which because the mother and the connection, I want to continue as long as I can, and now I feel, even with one good knee, I was feeling so much better, so I can't wait to go check the other knee out in a couple of weeks,
Yeah, okay, Sanjeev. Yeah, please, over to you.
Yeah, so there's a comment in the chat box. It's been said that I think reading Savitri also has a positive impact on the physical. So I guess everybody will agree with that to a different extent. I'm sure that would help. And I think the body is mentioned in Savitri in so many places, 250 pages, and has the body mentioned in it as well.
Yes. Yes.
Does anyone else have any question? Derek?
Hello, yes. The importance of physical education was brought home to me when I was working in Aurobindo some 50 years ago. And I was working in the gardens planting trees. And we had to dig very, very deep holes, 1 meter cubed. And in the rich red soil of Aurobindo, it was very, very difficult. The local Tamil people, they were able to dig a meter cube hole in 1 hour. So that means 6 or 7 hours. They could plant holes for about 6 or 7 trees. And I would struggle to do even 2. So it was very, very important that, I was getting sort of physical exercise training there. And I think the speaker mentioned about the attitude that one has. Since I've been back in the UK some years now, I've been going to the gym and regularly for the last 25 years now. And I think whatever you do, not just with physical exercise, the attitude you do it in, it's always must be an offering to the mother. So if you're doing running, or if you're doing cycling, or whatever activity you're doing in the gym, or just walking down the street, I try to sort of constantly think, fine, I'm offering this to the mother, and then my mind slips away, and then I come back and I think again. But with doing things in the gym, you're concentrating on one particular exercise for maybe 20 minutes, and then another one. So it's quite easy. But well, your mind sometimes drifts, but it's the offering that is important, not just in physical education, but in everything really. So that's just what I had to add.
So well put. So well put. That's a wonderful step. That is so true. That is so true.
I think that's been a wonderful session. Lots to think about, and so well presented by the three of you with so many stories and quotes that you helped us to get rid of that despise. I think that's the way I would look at it. Before we conclude and I play some music, I found the prayer of March 17, 1914 a very, very apt prayer. And if I please may read this, thank you, before we have some music. So Mother says in this prayer of March 17, 1914, When physical conditions are a little difficult and some discomfort follows, if one knows how to surrender completely before thy will, caring little for life or death, health or illness, the integral being enters immediately into harmony with thy law of love and life, and all physical indisposition ceases, giving place to a calm well-being, deep and peaceful. I have noticed that when one enters into an activity that necessitates great physical endurance, what tires one most is anticipating beforehand all the difficulties to which one will be exposed. It is much wiser to see at every moment only the difficulty of the present instant. In this way, the effort becomes much easier, for it is always proportionate to the amount of strength, the resistance at one's disposal. The body is a marvelous tool. It is our mind that does not know how to use it, and instead of fostering its suppleness, its plasticity, it brings a certain fixity into it, which comes from preconceived ideas and unfavorable suggestions. But the supreme science, O Lord, is to unite with thee, to trust in thee, to live in thee, to be thyself, and then nothing is any longer impossible to a man who manifests thy omnipotence. Lord, my aspiration rises to thee like a silent canticle, a mute adoration, and thy divine love illumines my heart. O divine Master, I bow to thee.
Wonderful.